I'm here with Chris Wolf, Donald Doan, and Nolan Barter today in our Paperchase office. These are the team behind Gellert Hospitality Group, the largest franchisee in the world of Five Guys. Chris and Donald are the owners of co-owners of Gellert Hospitality Group, and Nolan is the group controller. We're here for a discussion on growing your franchisee business and their journey as restaurant owners. Thank you guys so much for joining us here in the office today.
Thanks for having us.
Yeah.
I wanted to start about how has your trip to India been? What has it been like getting to meet the back office team here? And just what's your experience been in the country like?
It's been amazing. I mean, first, thank you for having us. It's been a pleasure. I think you never knew you were going to have so much fun without alcohol and meat for 5 days, but it's just been so hospitable. So again, I think that from that part it was been awesome. But then the other parts that you didn't really understand the how sophisticated and large Paperchase is. And so I think when you come here to the office, it kind of takes you back. So
awesome. Tell me a little bit about the journey, maybe from the start. How did you guys become Five Guys franchisees? And how did you grow to such a large size? You guys have 107 locations. So tell me about that story.
Yeah. It's been a crazy ride. We're nearly 17 years in from opening our first location. I think we'll actually, anniversary will be this week. All the credit to Donald. He kind of stumbled on Five Guys through a friend of his from his first work experience, and found me at the right time where I didn't know what kind of next phase of my work life was going to be. And we took the plunge and dove all in, operated, did it all, really learned the business, and really took some slow growth initially, opened a store a year, started developing some managers, Nolan being one of our initial ones, starting on the line. And that growth of developing these young people that were driven really allowed for us to take the next steps in our growth. We really blew up 4 or 5 years ago when we met our now partner, Bill Gellert. We're able to start acquiring Five Guys throughout the country. And, now we've got people like Nolan. Nolan's in a position running kind of all our finance team. And a lot of those same young people are kind of sitting at the top of our organization, which, we could see this week. It seems very similar to the Paperchase story. You see a lot of people that have been here a long time and kind of rode the wave to the top. So, it's been fun. I think we've got a ways to go, and hopefully there's some more growth coming.
Yeah, it's so, I feel so grateful as well for having people in our organization who have been there since the start, because it's the kind of knowledge that Nolan has that you can't train into somebody and you can't hire into somebody. Having a partner essentially who's been there from the beginning of your business is so rare, I think. And it really speaks to the organization that you guys run, that you're able to nurture that talent through all stages in their career.
Yeah, not only knowledge. I think there's a sense of empathy that's created in the culture when people have been at the lowest ranks that move to the top. So when they're at the top, they also know what it's like to be at the bottom. Yeah. And so I think that to me has been very important.
Tell me about some of the most critical junctures in your journey. What were the hardest points? Was it opening, your 5th store? Was it the Gellert Hospitality Group merger? What were the parts where you were I don't know what happens next. I know that there's a big future ahead of us, but oh my gosh, this seems so hard right now.
Yeah, that's a great question. There have been, I think, a lot of points. Those first days were terrifying, I would say. Neither one of us had worked in a restaurant, let alone owned one. So there's just fear of the unknown. You don't know what you don't know, and you're just fumbling your way along. I think we were fortunate in kind of being in a situation where we were able to take the mindset that we didn't need to be the most profitable out of the gate. We didn't have to prioritize that extreme efficiency. Our focus could be make sure the customer gets what they're supposed to, and we'll then figure out how to be efficient doing that. So we overstaffed, we wasted more food than we probably should have, but I think we were successful in that. And then, COVID, for like the rest of the world, I think that was a really scary, challenging time that, obviously you couldn't foresee, and really, but I think coming out of it, it forced a lot of change that lasted and made us better in the years since. And then just, I think for sure the merger and all these acquisitions, it really changes. You have to be different when you have 5 stores to 100. You need a finance team. I was the finance team for when there's 5 stores, and one person can't do that. Nolan can tell you that. So you're running an organization that just requires a lot more, and you have to outsource again. Like, we need a Paperchase because it can't be done by individuals in our organization. So
yeah, I think I would say the hardest part, obviously one is very hard. You're taking a leap of faith, and as Chris said, we both left our jobs, our careers, and we took pretty much all the money we had and bet on ourselves. And who does that? And so that's the hardest part. That's why most people aren't entrepreneurs, because you got to bet a big amount on yourself. But I always say, actually, the second store is the hardest, because the first store, you could be there all the time and you can make sure everything's perfect. But when you have 2, you have to learn to develop people, right? Because you can't be at 2 places at once. And so you really had to have that mindset that you're not a restaurant company, but you're a people development company. And our mission statement is to manufacture the leading hospitality managers in our industry. And I think that's what explains how we got to over 100 stores, is because we feel like we developed the best hospitality managers in the industry. And that's how Nolan went from being a crew member wiping down tables to leading our finance department. So
Nolan, how about from your perspective? What were those critical junctures where you're like, everything's changing really fast, and I need to make sure that we're on the right track?
Yeah, it's a different perspective, because until the last few years, I really didn't see the top side of operations, and especially finance. So I as I said, I'm grateful for them for giving me these opportunities. But we started from the bottom, and each time I take a new position, there's a huge expectation. From running shifts to running the store to running multiple stores. And every single one of those changes in my role have come with their own issues and hardships. And personally, I'm not super outgoing sometimes, and that's always put me out of my comfort zone. And then going beyond that, these acquisitions have just there's so much time and so much we have to put into it, even on the finance side, that it causes more problems sometimes than we can solve at one junction. And Paperchase has come in and helped us in a lot of those areas and answer some of the questions that we needed to get by and to continue to grow so fast.
Tell me about the decision to bring on Paperchase. Why did you feel the need to bring on more support to the finance team, and how did you come to choosing Paperchase?
Yeah, I think at the time we had about 60 stores, and down the pipeline we had 3 acquisitions that were coming 12 months, and our other partner, Bill, wanted to hire an additional person on the finance team. And, I didn't think that was a good idea. So I reached out to other franchisees to see that, what was their model? What were they using? I had an inclination to go outsource the work. And, called a franchisee in New York who used Paperchase and liked them. I had an initial call with Nish and Ruhel, and we just felt that you guys had the expertise and the bandwidth to take it on. And I think the reason why I didn't want to add a person to our finance team is because I knew that once we added one and we did one acquisition, we would have to add another one on the second acquisition and then another one on the third acquisition. It takes a lot of time and effort to build that expertise in-house. And that's not a great model to scale because you're adding one person every acquisition. And so, Paperchase allowed us to, gain that expertise, but in that bandwidth, so that as we kept on acquiring, you guys were big enough to keep absorbing. So that's how we kind of came up with it.
Tell me a little bit about what our team supports you guys with and how it's been helpful. What are the biggest impacts that their work has made on your lives?
They help us with a wide range of items, from bank reconciliations, credit card recs, doing some of the, I don't want to say small items because, everything that they do really makes an impact on our team. But, these little tasks that, my team doesn't have the bandwidth to, focus on, they're really taking over so we can spend time doing other items, processing financials and, trying to give the best information to Donald and Bill and Chris that we can. And, it's, again, with the acquisitions, they just gave us more time to focus on other areas.
Yeah, I think Paperchase for me, I feel that they help us get out of that stage of unconscious incompetence, right? You don't know what you don't know. And, I think in the financial world, another way of saying that is there's an invisible tax, right? So restaurants are very complicated, a lot of transactions, a lot of line items, a lot of money coming in and out. And there's something, if you miss, it adds up. And I think, at the gala I mentioned about, our sales tax, state sales tax that, we started rolling on delivery parties. Each one was collecting sales tax differently. And then we were paying sales tax. And then we were like, hold on a second, this doesn't seem right. Paperchase came in and was able to do the analysis, the reports and the worksheets, so to get us credit. And in 2023, Paperchase helped us get $30,000 in state credit. And then in 2024, they helped us get us $420,000. So just a monumental difference, right? And like I said, that's a pretty big tax on not knowing.
Yeah, absolutely. What are some of the financial KPIs that are most critical for you guys in running operations, whether it be in helping to guide your operations team to ensure that the business is profitable, or even as you look at acquisitions, what are the areas of the P&L that you look at on a weekly basis, on a monthly basis, and monitor constantly?
I think in our industry, for the most part, everything boils down to your food cost and your labor and how you control those. And I think when we're looking at an acquisition, those are the first areas we're going to look and typically find opportunity. I think what's allowed us to grow is, again, I spoke to at the beginning, we didn't care about efficiency. That didn't last real long. We just knew it wasn't the right thing to focus on at the beginning. But to do this well, you need to be able to serve your product and have it be perfect, but in an efficient way. Use your labor in the right ways, in the right times, build a great schedule, and control that food waste. And I think we've, as a company, become really strong in those areas. And that's where we can see when we walk in to we can physically see you walk into a store that you're considering acquiring, and just their staffing levels alone, you can see it almost immediately. Like they've got 2 bodies more than I think they need, than we would have for the business that they're doing. Or I can tell that garbage can is full of French fries and it shouldn't be. And we have processes that we can come in and fix that. So, and again, I think it starts, we need financials. Ours have to be clean and accurate so that we understand our numbers. So then when we look at prospective acquisition, we can look for those discrepancies. But it has to start with trusting our own and knowing what efficient looks like so that we can see that opportunity.
Yeah. What kind of advice would you give to a franchisee owner who's maybe, where you guys were 10 years ago? Let's say they have 10 to 15 locations.
Get out, sell now. Save yourself the headache.
It's a hard business.
Yeah,
Don't
right.
do it.
Yeah, I'm just kidding. What advice would I give someone that had 10 stores that wanted to get to 100? I think that's easy. You have to invest in people. You're never going to get to 100 doing it yourself. And you need well-trained, dedicated, loyal, motivated people to do it.
Absolutely. Yeah, it's essentially like you have to rely on your team in order to be able to grow, because like you said, you can't be everywhere all at once. And if you are, it's never gonna scale, and you're never gonna be able to be operationally efficient.
Right. Yeah, your team, and that team is like whether it's your internal team, but also like your partnerships.
Yeah. What are the hardest parts about running your business today?
The hardest part, I think the hardest part, from where I sit, is prioritizing the biggest opportunities. You have so many things coming out your way, and so many things you want to do, but I try to remind myself that 20% of the effort generates 80% of the results. The hard part of it is finding that 20% to work on, but that's the challenge, and that's what we work on and talk about all the time. It's like, look, we can do all of this. What are the 5 biggest things that we can improve on?
I think the other thing I would say is keeping your culture while you get that so big. It's it was easy to do when we had one store and we were there every day. You kind of create the pulse of the store, and you can have that personal contact with every employee that you have. The bigger you get, it's just not realistic. You can't have that personal touch every day. So it has to, those that you have passed it on to have to be creating that every day. But that's hard to do, and there has to be buy-in at those levels where you have that consistent contact. But there's no better reward than going in and meeting a new employee that you've never met before and seeing that all your messages are still being carried through. And that means that you've got something that people have bought in, because you might be 6 or 7 levels away from this person now from having that daily contact, but it's like the game of telephone. The message has made it through clear, and you've never spoken to them until that day. So, but it's really hard to do, to have that last when you now have 2,000 employees.
Yeah.
It's good to sometimes see yourself become invisible in an organization and see just like your voice carried throughout. It's like, ooh, I did it. I made it. If I didn't have to talk to this person and they get it already, that's like job well done.
Yeah, it's true peace of mind, because you worry, right, when you're not there, like, gosh, what's the store look like now? I haven't been to that store in a couple of years now. This is the first time. Is it going to feel like one of ours? So when you see that, it feels good. It tells you that your team is bought into your message.
Nolan, a lot of restaurant owners hope and pray to have a team member like you, where you've been with the company for so long. Mm-hmm. What was it about Chris and Donald's leadership that enabled you to grow in the organization and to help contribute to both operations and overall the organization in such a meaningful way?
And she's talking about besides the good looks, you know.
Exactly.
Like,
very, very critical.
Exactly.
We'll ignore that part.
Yeah. Really, it's the trust and faith that they've put in me. You know, I came in a week after they started their second store. Their main focus was that store because there was a new location on a college campus. They're expecting to be super busy, but they still made time to come in, learn my name, and after that, still remember my name and see me working and coming up through the ranks. A lot of, their first training program for managers was partially because of a failure on my part. And, I think that as a kind of a contribution that I put, not I don't know if it's a positive one, but on my part, but, it's just, they've trusted me at every single level. I don't think they ever doubted me, even when I doubted myself. Is probably the biggest.
We can laugh about it now, which is great. But it was, I think, when I said, we're a people development company, it started with Nolan, who now heads up our finance department, and Chelsea Jensen, who heads up our HR department. They were both, young and new to the business, and they failed. And I asked myself, look, these are two really good people that are failing, at a food safety test. And I looked at, that their failure as our failure, as my failure, as the company failure. And I'm like, look, if we're going to succeed, our people have to succeed at every level. And so we kind of redesigned the whole company to say, hey, our company is to train the best managers. And so I love that Nolan brought that up, and he sees it as his failure, but I really see it as my failure. And it was a pivotal role in the company and how we kind of shifted our mindset.
I like that you saw that mistake as not an individual's mistake, but rather as a systems failure, and didn't take it out on somebody who's incredibly talented and say, oh, you failed at this, and so that's your problem. But you took it as the company's issue and then moved forward in a really positive way from there.
I think, if you're going to grow through your people and put them in new positions that they're not familiar with, that's just going to happen. We're getting them out of their comfort zone, and in some cases we haven't designed these new positions when Nolan's first getting them and moving on. They're new positions, and they're certainly new to them. But if you can fight through that, I think they're better off because they're in positions, they're growing, and we certainly are, because you have now people that are loyal to us and dedicated to us. And, I can't tell you the peace of mind we have every night knowing that the people running our organization, they've been with us for 15, 17 years. And it's not, I'd like to think it's more than a job to them, that they're truly looking out for, Donald, Bill, and I. And, that, again, the bigger you get, we can't have that personal touch. That means everything. And, but it's just part of growing through people.
Given that a lot of your team has been at the company for so long, tell me about the onboarding process with Paperchase. Bringing on new people must have been kind of terrifying. And how did that work? Was it easy? Was it hard? How was those first couple of months with Paperchase?
I don't know if it was much. It was very difficult. I think it was more difficult on our end to kind of analyze where our weaknesses are and what Paperchase could do to help fill some of those holes. Working with the team, working with Mayor and the rest of his team has been great. I mean, their knowledge base is top notch. They can come in, we can give them the problem, and they can within hours tell us how to fix it, or design new processes to help us with that. So the whole onboarding process with them, we did it small chunks at a time, but it was relatively smooth. And again, their knowledge base, your guys' knowledge base is just top level, and it's helped us out a lot. And hopefully continue to help us out.
Why do you think it's important to have a financial operations support partner who's experienced and specialized in hospitality?
Well, I mean, it's again back to the knowledge base. I mean, if they don't know how we operate as a hospitality business, they're not going to even be able to give us proper insights into where we can get better. They might not even have they might not even be able to look at the same P&L and think, oh, hey, that's an issue right there. That could be improved upon. It's just communication. If you're working with two different sets of parameters, you can't really communicate properly because you don't know what the other person's trying to say. I guess I don't know if that came out quite right, but
it makes a lot of sense to me.
Well, I think one thing, having a partner that specializes in restaurants, from an onboarding standpoint, you guys can ramp up so much quicker. I was just, had lunch with your tech team, and one of the most complex part of onboarding a customer is, creating all the interfaces to the back office systems. So us as a company, we might have 13 different databases based on all of our vendors. And it takes time to build those interfaces. But because you guys specialize in restaurants alone, every restaurant you onboard, you've already have 80 to 90% of those interfaces already built, right? So you only have to do the last 10, 20%. So I think that helps so much from an onboarding, and you only gain that knowledge through your focus.
What would you say to somebody who's considering franchising for the first time? What are the things that they should either ensure that they're being given support from their franchisor, or what are the things that they should know going into the restaurant franchisee business?
You mean besides don't do it?
Yeah, exactly.
I would say, I think Donald and I both over the years have met with numerous people considering getting into franchising and food-specific franchising. The advice, I'd say the most important thing I would want to know if I were a prospective franchisee is how happy are the existing franchisees? Are they successful, and would they do it again? I think, it's one thing to talk to a franchisor, but you got to remember part of the franchisor's job is to sell franchises. And, there are plenty out there that are looking for the quick upfront franchise fee. And if you do well, that's gravy. We'll take a royalty later, but I'll take the chunk up front. So I think really, talk to as many franchisees as you can, and plenty will be extremely open. They'll share a P&L with you. They'll tell you everything you want to know. And to your point, I think understanding the support you're getting from the franchisor as well. But I would want that information coming from the franchisees. The franchisor, again, is going to tell you they're super supportive, will be there all the time. And plenty of them are, but you'll get the truth from the franchisees. And I think I would want, if I'm talking to 10, 20, I'd want to make sure that 95% would be like, yes, I would do it again. And I'm looking to open additional units. That would be the vibe that I would want to have to consider taking the plunge.
Yeah, I think in my 17 years on people asking if my advice for franchising, I haven't recommended to anybody in 17 years. And I think, there's a couple of reasons for that. One is that they don't have all the elements that you need to get into this game, and they don't understand the consequences if you do get in this game. So a lot of people will approach me who are, in their 40s or 50s and say, hey, I want to get in franchising. And that's typically a problem because when you start that late, you're married, you have kids, you have a mortgage, and you don't realize is when you need that initial capital, you might have to take it out an SBA loan. Well, SBA loan collateralizes all your assets. So if your business fails, you don't just declare bankruptcy and walk away, because most of these companies are smart and they make you personal guarantee everything. So not only do you lose your business, but you lose your house and you lose everything else. And then the wife's not happy and the kids aren't happy. So you could potentially lose them as well. And then, the flip side, if you have a really, young person that comes in that wants to franchise, well, they don't have, those ties and those responsibilities. But the problem is they lack capital, right? And so then they come up and they're like, well, Donald, I was able to meet the initial investment. But the problem when you could barely meet that first initial investment, that means you haven't, and they're like, I can borrow a little bit of money from my mom and dad, and my grandmother will let me borrow some money, and I just barely met that initial quote. Well, the problem with that is that you can get that one store open, but if it doesn't work, the game's over, right? And so franchising is a lot about, it's a game of probability. If you open 5 stores, if 4 of them are good, that's great, and you're going to keep going. And so you kind of have to be young to stomach the failures, and you need enough capital to get at least 5 at bats, right? So that the game of probability is on your side. And so that is a reason why I haven't really recommended to a lot of people. And Chris and I are fortunate to get in this game in our late 20s, where we were pretty young and dumb. And we're just like, let's just do it. And if we fail, we'll just go to grad school. And so luckily I don't have my MBA.
Yeah, it takes a whole lot of perseverance, but it's tough because you really don't know what to expect until you're in there. I mean, the restaurant business is a weird business. It's really, really way more complex, I see it at least, than any other kind of business. You have such a large labor percentage, you have such a large cost of goods percentage, and then not even to mention all of your operational expenses, that there's so little left at the bottom line. You need to squeeze every single part of those kind of buckets.
Yeah, it's very complex, but it's also hyper competitive.
Yeah.
There's a restaurant in every street corner, and if you don't do a good job, they don't come back, and they tell their 10 friends not to come back.
Yeah.
And so it's complex and it's so competitive, which makes it's the restaurant business is not for the faint of heart.
No, and I think the one other thing in some conversations I've had, often it's either I'm getting out of my career, want to transition, and you can tell it, or it's just they want it as a passive investment. And it just can't be and if you really, to give it the best chance at success, I think the experience we got in those first couple of years of being in there every day, it's to this day, it carries all the weight in the world, because we truly understand every little aspect of Five Guys, because we've done it and we know what we're asking often can be done. You've done it before. And I think without doing that, it's really hard you're not going to get the most out of your business. I just know that I don't think would be sitting here today if we took the approach of, hey, let's invest in this, we'll build a store, and we'll just hire a manager and hope it goes well. There's no chance that we would have made it to this point. I'm not sure if we would have made it to store 2 with that approach. So I think you really have to be willing to dive all in. And with anything you do, that should be the mindset. But a lot of times with franchising, for some reason, there's the thought of this is going to be a side investment, and it's hard to hope for the success.
It's not a quick get rich quick scheme. It's a labor of love.
Yeah, it's odd to me that so many people kind of almost think of, especially franchising restaurants, as like, oh, it's almost like putting money in the stock market and it'll just come out, you know, in the end and on top. And it's so the opposite. It's so much hard work. It is like being in, especially for those first like 5 to 7 years, it's really being deeply involved in all the day-to-day aspects of running a restaurant. It's not just like a set it and forget it kind of business.
I always say it's one of the most unusual investments ever, because if you think about like a home builder who builds a house and speculates and says, I'm going to build $1 million home and I think I could sell it for 1.5 million. Well, if the market turns and it goes south, that $1 million home might be worth, I don't know, 700,000, 500,000, but it's worth something. If you go and build a restaurant and spend $1 million or 2 million, if that doesn't make a profit, it's not worth zero. It's worth negative money, right? Because no one's going to buy it, so that's at zero. But then all the loans and everything, you're in debt, and so it's just one of the things that you could build the most beautiful restaurant and if it doesn't make money, it's worth less than zero.
Yeah, it's like such a costly business, honestly. And like, therefore, if you don't have people who are watching your back and on the money side, everything can go downhill so quickly because you can manage your operations perfectly. But if you have somebody who is just passively, watching your reconciliations or not checking bank balances or figuring out tax compliance, or if your organization gets too big to do those kinds of things, it can become such a costly mistake as well. Once you've already spent so much time invested in energy and personal capital.
You're making me sweat here, just hearing all of the complexities.
I mean, you guys are killing it, and you guys know how this works every single day. And your journey has been so inspiring for me personally, but as well for all of our team members. And I know our team is so grateful for getting to work with all of you every single day, and so appreciative of the support that you give us and the trust that you give us. And we're just grateful to be able to be part of this incredible 17-year journey. So I have to thank you so much for coming and visiting us and getting to spend some time with the team, and really appreciate your guys' partnership.
Thank you. Yeah. Getting to spend some time with you guys has been such an inspiration as well. Meeting the team, such a young, vibrant, entrepreneurial team. I'm excited. I've left with so many great ideas. Can't wait to get back to the office and work on them with you guys.
Agreed.
Yeah, it's been incredible. Can't thank you guys enough. And it's really, I'm leaving here more motivated than I came, of just seeing what you have built here and the people you have. It's just incredible. It's the happiest group of employees and people I've ever seen. And it's a testament to all of you. Like, we know how hard that is to create, and you've done it. And, we're lucky to be partners of yours and looking forward to a lot of great years ahead.
It means a lot coming from two people who have built an unbelievable team. So I appreciate that.
Awesome. Thank you.
Thank you guys.
Thank you.
Thanks so much for joining us.
Thank you.